wanting or rather seeing younger lawyers coming into the bar. But isn't it difficult, or maybe not difficult, but given that the inordinate delays that one faces for everything, or boycotts that the strike go into. So all this, aren't they reasons why a young lawyer would be completely
Of course. The system doesn't work well.
Yes.
There are boycotts. There's corruption. Let's face it. That's an extremely important reason. There's corruption. There's falling standards. There are people who get ahead for the wrong reasons. There is lots which is wrong. Okay, nobody is saying the bar is a great place. I'm saying it's an important place. And there's a lot that one can do. Even with all the things that are wrong over there, there's a lot that one can do to make it better. And let me tell you also, there are very fine people in the system. There are very fine people who are operating, who are lawyers, who are there in the system. So I don't think, I don't think there's room for too much pessimism. Okay. I don't think there's room for incautious optimism, but I still think the bar is a very viable thing, provided some things like taking care of a better salary package, emoluments are done. I think boycotts are intolerable. Why do we exist as a legal profession? We exist so that if something happens unjust to somebody, they can come to us and we can take their case to the courts. If somebody gets beaten up by a cop, we are there to file a case for that person and to prosecute and get damages and monetary relief. If some law is being passed which is against the interests of a group, then we are there to fight for that group. But if a policeman beats up a lawyer, we don't use the courts that way, we go on boycott. If there is some legislation passed which affects us, we don't challenge the legislation, we go on boycott. So the very fact that lawyers boycott the courts, in fact, demonstrates that they don't think that their own system can sort out the problem. I have no problem with anybody going on boycott. I think it's your right to say, I will not go to court, but then return the brief. Don't hold on to the brief. Return your brief and say, I'm boycotting the court. No difficulty at all. So I'm completely against boycotts. The Indian judiciary is the world's most powerful judiciary. Okay. Nothing matches it in terms of its range of jurisdictions and in terms of its self-control. 1992 onwards, after the Judges 2 case, the second Judges case, the power of appointing judges is with the court. Okay, you can't get an appointment. The final voice is that of the court. Barring impeachment by Parliament, which is very difficult, judges retain complete control of disciplinary proceedings. You can't prosecute a judge in the Prevention of Corruption Act. You can't prosecute a judge at all without the say-so of the Chief Justice. So judges have complete control, as far as they're concerned. Independence of judiciary in the Indian context now, the threat is not from the executive or the legislature. They simply do not have the power over judges. And we wrote that, I said that in an article in the 90s. I said the judiciary has taken over control, yes. Public opinion today supports it. Those were the times when the executive was it was in bad shape. So I said public opinion will support it. But the court has to realize that it will keep this control only if it can do a good job. Yes. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. Okay. Corruption in the courts has grown. And if you have Chief Justice Bharucha, who said in 2000, he said, in inverse proportion, he said 20% of our judges across the board are corrupt. And everybody says that number has increased. You talk to any retired Chief Justice of the Court, Justice Verma, anybody who says it's a very serious problem, and they know. We know from, Now, how are you going to handle this? Okay, because as you said, it demoralizes the youngster. It demoralizes us, having been in the profession for so long, and it demoralizes that huge number of judges who are very fine, upright, sterling people. Because everybody gets tarred. You have one rotten apple, and everything gets tarred. I think the time has now come for us to have a National Judicial Commission to handle two things. So one is appointments, okay? And I think earlier we had appointments done by the executive, that didn't work. Then 92 the judiciary took over appointments solely, and that's had its problems. I think everybody now realizes that that's not working well. Most of us want a National Judicial Commission, comprised, you can even have a majority from the court, yes, but also with other representations from the executive and legislature. But the important thing is not just the composition of the commission, as important as that it is, it's also the processes being followed. And today I think I put my faith more in processes than people, yes. I think if you have transparency in that system, and simply, an issue of, if you're considering people for appointment, make it known that these are the names we consider for appointment. If people have complaints, let them make it, okay? You might not want to deal with anonymous petitions, but if somebody is willing to stand up and take responsibility and say, I know this about such and such a potential appointee, then I think that needs to be inquired into, okay? So I think there should be a different body, like a judicial commission, and there should be, openness. That will go a great deal, I think, to saving us some of the mess we've got into about some very unwise appointments, okay? The second thing is discipline, disciplinary measures, corruption, and I'm focusing on integrity, I'm not really focusing on competence. That's a difficult thing, and if a judge is willing to kind of learn, a judge will learn, there's no difficulty there. Integrity is a very serious issue. And frankly, unless we tackle the issue of corruption, whether it's in the judiciary and more in executive legislature, as a country we cannot hope, to improve, yes? It just drags us down. This one thing more than anything else. And having done a study of some systems abroad, some things are very clear to me. One, that if you want to tackle corruption, focus on the top, okay? Don't focus on, the sub-inspector and the tehsildar and all that. Focus on the top, that is, focus on the leaders. And the leaders are, your ministers, your senior bureaucrats, and your senior judges. Focus on the leaders. Have an independent investigative machinery which is not subject to government control, yes? And if you make out a prima facie case against somebody, they should step down and be under suspension for a short period. But within that short period, prosecute the case. Don't prosecute the case at the lower level of the magistrates of the Sessions Court and then work its way up. Appoint a judge of the Supreme Court, maybe with one or two judges of the High Courts, to hear that case expeditiously. Because if you're hearing the case of a leader, yes, that case deserves priority. Because if a leader is corrupt, you don't want that leader, leading this country, okay? So process it expeditiously. If you do it expeditiously, within 3 months you will have a result. These cases are not so difficult to, there are no great points of thing. Within 3 months you will have a result. If the person is not guilty, obviously reinstated, etc. The person is guilty, and the person steps down, and you follow the trace of that corruption to recover the assets, yes? If we did this, if we had this kind of a system, I think we would really deal with corruption well. And if we set 3 examples and showed how within 3 months you can actually find somebody guilty of corruption and put an end to that person's career, I think we'll go a great deal. And that will percolate. If you deal with corruption at the top, that improvement will percolate.
Having spent so many years at the bar, is going to the bench the next obvious step for you at some point of time?
Well, that got ruled out in 2002. I was invited to come to the bench in 2000. I was in New York then teaching, and I got a message saying, will you give your consent? I gave my consent because I think it's important that a lawyer should accept judgeship, even if it means, and I don't think it's any great sacrifice. I think a judge's work is a very great work. I think I don't think any kind of work is more honorable than the calling of a judge, okay? But my thing ran into, I'd done a lot of public interest cases, and quite a few of these had got people into trouble, whether it was chief ministers or other senior people, etc. So there was quite a bit of opposition. At the same time, there were, attorney generals, law ministers, and senior judges who were very keen that they wanted me to keep the hat in. But I waited for 2 years, and at the end of 2 years, I said, I'm pulling out. I can't subject myself to more of the uncertainty because you can't do anything. You can't even take on an important case because if a client comes to you, if you're engaged, instructed in a case, you have to say, look, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. So you just have to put your life on hold. And I thought 2 years was, more than enough. But I am thankful for all these people who put roadblocks in my way, because if I had become a judge, I could have never done my work on mediation. I could never have done that. So I'm really thankful to them.
So is that something that's completely ruled out, or there's still a slim chance of hope?
Hey, listen, I'm 58, and the judges in this country retired at 62 in the High Court, 65 in the Supreme Court. So yes, it is ruled out.